Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I want to talk about why I love reading and also my dad. So one of the questions I get asked a lot in the comments is how do you read so much? And I have made videos about that in the past. I made a couple of videos about how to read more, which I tend to put up in January when everyone is doing their New Year's resolutions and resolving to read more. So I will probably do a video a bit like that again for this January. But I wanted to talk today about the real reason I read so much, and that's just because I really love reading. That at its heart is the reason I am able to read so many books, is because I enjoy reading more than pretty much any other pastime. Clearly I enjoy spending time with my family and things like that. But if I am on my own, if I got time to myself, I would much rather be reading than anything else. I'd much rather be reading than, like playing video games or watching movies, or, if I sit down on my own and start watching a movie, I tend to get anxious is maybe the wrong word, but I get a bit kind of angsty after a while. And I feel like I want to be doing something else. And the thing I want to be doing rather than watching a movie is reading. I find reading to be something that satisfies me in a way that nothing else does. And I get I get an enormous sense of satisfaction when I finish a book. In particular, I feel like I've achieved something every time I finish a book. So I don't really know why that, I can't really analyse exactly why that is, but I think there are a couple of different things that I wanted to talk about today that definitely are, have contributed to my love of reading. So the first one is the fact that I'm an introvert, and I've talked about this on the channel before. So I'm a big introvert. I enjoy my own company. I find the company of other people often is, draining. No disrespect to anyone who knows me in real life who's watching this. I do like spending time with you, honest, but you can have too much of a good thing. And I'm someone whose capacity to communicate with other people, like one-on-one and in groups in particular, I find that to be a challenging thing to do and something that is exhausting. So I can do it, but I'm exhausted at the end of it, and I need time to myself. And for me, reading is a wonderful time, a wonderful way to spend time on my own. And I think because of that, as a kid, whilst I didn't recognise it in myself as a kid in the same way that I do now, and certainly back then in like the 70s and 80s, it wasn't something that was really talked about in the same way that it is now. I found myself drawn to books as a way to just have quiet time that felt rich and fulfilling. And part of that fulfillment comes through experiencing wonderful things through books, experiencing the lives of other people, experiencing the adventures of other people through books. So I think being an introvert is definitely a big reason why I love to read so much. And there has come to be for me, and this was true from an early age, something about the act of reading that I find fulfilling. Even if I'm not necessarily enjoying the thing that I'm reading, just the act of staring at words and those words going into my brain, for some reason, I find a wonderful thing. There is a magic there, isn't there? There is a magic in the fact that someone else has written things down and you are now looking at those things. They've been reproduced for you, and you are reading them and taking the meaning that the other person wanted to impart, into your brain. I remember as a kid sitting at the breakfast table and reading the back of cereal packets, and even finding that enjoyable. So I've talked on the channel about my love of kind of trashy fiction and things like that. Maybe that's the ultimate trashy fiction, is like the back of cereal packets. Even that can give me pleasure. So I have a pretty low bar for what I find enjoyable. But yeah, I genuinely remember. And I don't know if it was a particular brand of cereal or it was like an own brand cereal from the supermarket. But I remember on the backs of a lot of the cereal packets we had when I was a kid, they had a breakdown of like the different vitamins and things like that you would get from the cereal, and descriptions of what those vitamins would give you, and also examples of other types of food that you could get that thing from. I really remember that clearly, and quite clearly remember the illustrations. I'll have to do some googling and see if I can find a reproduction of them. So that's the first part of what I wanted to say about my love of reading, just to kind of describe my love of reading and then talk about introversion. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was my dad. So it's actually my dad's birthday today, so it felt very appropriate to do this. So if you're watching this, Dad, happy birthday. I will give you a call. I will give you a call as well to wish you happy birthday. So my dad, I remember all through my life being an avid reader, and his parents were avid readers as well. And the thing that's most important to me, or has become, I think, over time, most important to me and most meaningful to me about what they read was, what my dad reads and what his parents read was books that they knew they were going to enjoy. They read for entertainment, not necessarily for, and I think, my dad does sometimes read for, to broaden his horizons. He's very much into science and things like that, so he reads a lot of science non-fiction type books. But when I think about his parents and what they read, my grandmother read Catherine Cookson and Catherine Cookson type books. So there's kind of historical family saga romance type books. And my granddad, my dad's dad, read like adventure type books. So like naval adventures, like Alexander Kent and people like that. C.S. Forrester and people like Alistair MacLean, Desmond Bagley, those kind of big thriller writers of the 60s and 70s. That was the kind of stuff he just devoured. And my dad, as a kid, I remember reading a lot of things like that. So kind of thrillers in the sense of like kind of espionage type books, and also a lot of science fiction. So I have grown over time to like science fiction less. But certainly as a kid, my dad's love of science fiction and him talking to me about science, the science fiction books he was reading, I think really made an impression on me and has definitely been a big contributor to my love of reading, as a kid, which has then just grown and grown as I've got older. My mum also is a really big reader, but read and continues to read kind of books I don't particularly enjoy, so she reads more kind of literary fiction type stuff, which sometimes I like. But I don't like it as nearly as much as the kind of pure entertainment style of reading. And I think it was probably my mum, who would read to me when I was a kid, kind of the kind of bedtime routine. Although I don't necessarily remember that. I think I was too young to remember it. But the thing that really has stuck with me over the years is my dad talking to me about the books he was reading and telling me about books he thought I might enjoy, and often books that weren't appropriate for me to read at that moment in time, but he thought I might enjoy at some point in the future. I can very clearly remember my dad telling me about Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes when I was really quite young, and I still remember it to the extent that he spoiled that book for me. So I knew the ending of that book long before I read it, because my dad had told me in detail about it, because it was a book he really, really loved, and he wanted to share that love of reading in that particular book with me. So I do think, my parents, my grandparents, but particularly my dad, really have played a massive part in my love of reading and the importance of books to me over the years. I've made videos in the past. I made a video a while ago about kids and reading and how I thought that, we as parents, I'm a parent, shouldn't worry too much if our kids don't read books, because the world is changing, and certainly my kid reads a lot but doesn't necessarily read books. But I do think books are important, and I think that we are, there's something about books and the fact that I was going to grab the book next to me just as an illustration, but it's a completely inappropriate book. So let me grab another one. Let me grab one that actually my dad would probably like. So Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. So there's just something wonderful about the fact that in this fairly small thing, there is a story, there are characters. This book was originally published in 1954. This is a movie tie-in edition to tie in with the 70s movie adaptation. So it's it's something that has lasted. And this book, this actual edition was published in 1978. So this book is 45 years old. This actual object is 45 years old and still contains all the same words and all the same wonder that it did when it was first printed. So that's amazing. So whilst I said previously, don't worry if your kids don't read books, I think that's still true, but equally I get that there is something absolutely magical about books, and that is a magic that speaks to me. So today, in this reasonably brief video, I just wanted to talk about that, to share that, that pure joy I feel every time I pick up a new book. I feel a sense of huge expectation and wonder at what I'm going to find in that book. So I wanted to talk about that, and I also wanted to say on his birthday a big thank you to my dad for being such a huge part of building that love of reading in me. So I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know in the comments why you think you love reading, and if there were people in your childhood who you think really contributed to that love of reading. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.